Hi, how are you doing today? It is time for another reading vlog, and this time it is for the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes by Suzanne, which means it's gonna be a very spoilery reading vlog. I recently read the original Hunger Games trilogy for the first time. I watched the movies for the first time. All of that you can experience on my channel if you want to go check out my thoughts on everything. And I'm very excited to delve into this book. I don't know much about it, so I'm very curious to see what it is about and how it's gonna go. But like I said, this is gonna be a spoiler reading vlog. The original vlog I did for the Hunger Games was spoiler free. It is gonna be spoilery because I can't discuss one book without using any spoilers and still make an entertaining vlog. So I'm gonna go in depth for spoilers. And honestly, I kind of hate that I decided to go spoiler free for the Hunger Games vlog because I feel like there's so many thoughts I have that I never got to like properly discuss because it's spoilers. So I think I'm gonna have a good time with this one. I'm also gonna be annotating this one, so that's also gonna be fun. And yeah, I'll update you once I've gotten a chunk into this book. This book is like, it's 500 something pages, so it is quite long. So I'm 100 pages into the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, so I thought I'd give you an update with my thoughts because I do have a lot of thoughts, mainly so far, like not necessarily like ballad things, if that makes sense, just mainly observations about just how the games are different. And then also we have learned like a little bit of like the war that led to the games, and I think that's interesting. So let's begin with the fact that Tigris, I don't know how you pronounce it, is Snow's cousin. Did I miss that? Is that information that I missed in the original story, or was this a shock to everyone? I did not expect that, and that just makes me curious now on the Tigris book, because I doubt this book is going to show us how she became a rebel and against Snow. I'm so interested in that. Like, how did that happen? Especially because they are really close so far in this book. Like, they're this like tight. They're basically brother sister, but like they're cousins, but like basically they act like siblings. So what went wrong? And then we learn that the Snows now are a poor family. They used to be really rich, but they like their money came from District 13. So after the war, and that place got like bombed to shit and unlivable, although we know they went underground, like technically unlivable, like that stopped their income and therefore they're poor, which is interesting because I never considered the concept of poor people in the capital before. So there's that. Also, it has been like pretty hard to read from Snow's perspective. I'm not gonna like, Snow himself is like very privileged and annoying, but mainly like the people around him are just like lost all their humanity, and it's difficult to read at times. But that's the point, and I'm assuming he'll also lose his humanity because that's Snow from the original trilogy. We also get the lore drop that the Reaping Day is on July 4th. Again, is this something I missed in the original trilogy? Because that's a theory. And then we get our first like information about like the difference between the games now and how we experience them in the original trilogy, because this is the 10th games, and with Katniss we're doing the 74th and the 75th, so a lot has happened. But up until this point, the tributes would just be dumped into the Capitol Arena, which was a amphitheater that we used for sports and entertainment before the war. And yeah, they were dropped in there with some weapons to murder each other, and viewing was encouraged in the Capitol, but a lot of people avoided it, which also I think is interesting because it's the main event on TV every year in the original trilogy. And actually a lot we've already talked about in this book is how to make the games more exciting so people keep watching, which further supports, as much as I hate Gale, it does have one good point in the original trilogy, is that if we don't watch, the games won't last. Like that, the games only exist because we watch, and this book is perfectly showcasing that because nobody's watching, so they are like coming up with ideas to get people to watch more, because you know that's what keeps the games going. And basically, to keep people watching, for the first time this year, the tributes will have mentors, and 24 of the Academy's best and brightest seniors have been tapped for the job, which is how Snow got involved. And yeah, there's not much of a spectacle to the games now, which I think is an interesting change. It also makes sense because obviously the game started as a punishment for the rebels, so it would make sense that it started off as just like throwing in the ring, and like they'll figure it out and like not real spectacle around it. We also get introduced to a character I really like, and that's Suzanne. And I think he's a very interesting character because he is originally from District 2 actually, but his father just was really smart with investments, and after District 13 got bombed and all of like the weapons production got moved from District 13 to District 2, he got very rich and he helped, like he donated a lot of money to the capital to like be able to rebuild, and that's how they were allowed to move to the capital, which I think is really interesting and makes me think if there's like any other movements from districts to capital, because there was such a huge divorce between the capital and the districts, and a lot of capital people don't see district people as people. So it makes me wonder if there's like any more crossover, if that family is the only one in history to have ever done that. But that does give him a very interesting perspective because he did still grow up in District 2 and just moved when he was like still a kid, but like he has distinct memory of this District 2, and I think it is just an interesting perspective to have when we are so like involved with people. We don't take district people or people, you know? And of course, each like mentor gets assigned a tribute before tributes get picked. So like you're just told like the girl, like Snow is just told the girl from District 12, and then afterwards the reaping happens and he knows that Lucy Gray is the girl from District 12. And Sejanus actually gets matched up with the boy from District 2, which to me is very interesting because like I said, he grew up in District 2, he knows the people in District 2, he's also of reaping age technically, like everyone is of reaping age. And there was a point in the book a bit later on where I am right now where he does mention that he does constantly keep thinking of the fact that there is a world in which he would be in the reaping. He could have been reaped. And Coriolanus thinks that's a stupid thought to have because like he's in the capital now, so why even consider that? But like obviously that's a thing on your mind if you grew up in District 2. But I think that honestly it does get mentioned that his dad lobbied for that because District 2, they aren't careers yet, but District 1, 2, 4 and 11 are currently considered kind of like the strongest districts. 1 and 2 because they just have the most resources, and then 4 and 11 because they are from places that are more involved with food, if that makes sense. Like a lot of food comes from those places, so they have more access to food and therefore tend to be stronger. So it does get mentioned that his dad kind of like lobbied for him to get the District 2 tribute simply because District 2 is a good position. Everyone would want to have someone from District 1 or 2. But I think that's kind of a punishment for him. I don't know why, but like we do end up learning later on that the guy from District 2 is one of his classmates, and that Sejanus' family is very infamous and hated in District 2 because of their move to the capital. So I feel like pairing him up with someone that obviously hates him, and even before the reaping happened and they already matched him up, the chances were high, even if this wasn't a former classmate, that it was going to be someone who hated his guts, allowed to have that more personal connection. Like I don't know, I feel like there was some form of punishment there, either if it's a reminder of like the capital to their family to be like you'll never be one of us, or if it's something else, I don't know, but like there's something fishy going on there. Anyway, moving on to where I actually left off, and which is where Coriolanus is just been assigned the District 12 girl, and they watch the reaping, and Lucy Gray Beard, how do you pronounce the last name? I'm so sorry. Is selected, and she makes a spectacle of her weeping. Like she drops a snake on the mayor's daughter, which puts the mayor in a frenzy and like slaps her, and then the mayor gets pulled off of stage by the peacemakers, and she ends up performing a song. Like it's a thing. And also everybody is like dressed in like very like sad clothing, while Lucy Gray is wearing like a rainbow dress, and Coriolanus this like says it reminds him of like circus people's clothing. So it's immediately interesting. She immediately stands out. And then Coriolanus, because he needs this to go well, because that's his only way to basically be able to get into college, because he doesn't have money. And like college is university in his world, but he doesn't have enough money. He goes to the train to immediately kind of like welcome Lucy Gray, even though that's not necessarily like what they're supposed to do. And again, a lot of things different. It mentions that in the past, the tributes had gone directly into the arena the morning after they had all arrived in the capital, but now, because of the mentorship, they got a couple of days so they can familiarize themselves with their tributes, and then there'll be a televised interview before they go into the games. So we're already like switching over just like a tiny bit now to the games we know, like even if it's not fully. What's exceptionally sad is just how the tributes are treated now in this timeline and during the 10 games. Like they arrive in a train that is actually designed to transport goods, not people, and they are like, and they're not like the cars that like the little cars or the train cars that they're transporting in aren't even clean, and they are all like handcuffed and restricted. It is something, and it's really messed up. And then from the train they're being transported into like a truck that's basically a cage on wheels. That's also disgusting. Like the whole thing is kind of disgusting, and they're just like thrown in there, and then from that to be like shooting with like a shoot down into a monkey house at the zoo, which is just wild. And that's where the tributes like spend their time so far. The games, I think people can just like come and gawk at them the entire time, and it's disgusting. Like these tributes are being treated as animals, and it is absolutely wild. Like I said, this does all like go in line with the fact that the Hunger Games are supposed to be a punishment, but damn, that's really difficult to read that's what's happening. Like at least Katniss and Peeta had some like a week of luxury before the games began, you know? And you know, that's still terrible, but damn. This is so fucked. And because Coriolanus was at the train, and he ended up kind of like taking an entire route with the tributes, and he also accidentally like got trapped in the zoo enclosure, and he kind of takes an opportunity to kind of like showcase Lucy Gray and like use the cameras that are there to like film the arrival of the tributes to showcase her and like make her more popular. And then one of the interviewers say, "So Lucy Gray, you're the tribute from District 12," and she responds, "It's Lucy Gray, and I'm not really from 12. My people are Covey, I don't know if I mispronounced that. Musicians by trade. We just took a wrong turn one day and were obliged to stay." "Oh, so what district are you from then?" She says, "No district in particular. We move from place to place as the fancy take us. Well, we used to anyway before the peacekeepers rounded us up a few years back." Which is interesting. That's something we haven't really heard of before, and also makes me wonder how that happened, why that happened. Because again, I'm just gonna say skip forward a bit. There was a time where she's asked if like what side of the war she was on. I believe it is when Coriolanus interviews her later on, and she says like they were on neither side, which is interesting. So that they're, I don't know, I think this whole like Covey thing is like very interesting, and I hope that we get more explanation about what that is, what that means, because something's happening. And then Coriolanus gets pulled out of the enclosure, and he gets a bit reprimanded for doing that, because that's not really the job he was supposed to do. And then after he gets reprimanded, he goes back to the zoo, and he sees that Sejanus is handing out sandwiches to the tributes. And this is the scene where Sejanus mentions that he could have like been in a tribute's place, if that makes sense. And again, to make Lucy seem more popular, Coriolanus suggests to her that she sings, and maybe like, you know, by getting more attention, more people might bring her food as well, because they're not being fed, which is also absolutely insane. And basically Coriolanus the next day is back at school, and they talk a lot about how do we make the games more exciting, and they bring up betting, which honestly shocked that that's not a thing that was on before, because I feel like it's human nature to bet on everything. Sorry to say that. So that's kind of shocked that that's not a thing up until this point. And then they also go to interview their tributes to kind of have info about them. And Coriolanus and Lucy kind of connect on the fact that they both lost their parents. Lucy kind of mentions a bit more about her family and the Covey, again, I don't know how to pronounce it, and Coriolanus is the only one to actually get proper answers from the tributes. And they mention, and Coriolanus also talks about like things to do for the interview, and like he realizes that Lucy Gray just has no motivation to do anything, because whatever like at the zoo she wanted to sing and be seen because I could get her food, but if she does the interview and like she sings there, it doesn't print or anything because immediately after the interview she's put into the games and she'll die. So they all notice that kind of, all the mentors kind of notice that in their tributes that they don't really see a point in playing to the public. So they come up with the idea that people can send food, like the crowd can send food, which is basically the start of the sponsors. And they're like thinking things out in that way. And then they all go to the zoo to kind of like see the tributes, feed them. And where I just left off, the girl did the girl tribute from District 10 just killed her mentor, which is wild. So I'm very excited to continue reading. I'm sorry for any background noise in this clip because there is construction going on outside and I can't do anything more besides keeping my window closed, which I did, so you'll have to bear with me. But I'm at page 200 of the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. So let's give you some more thoughts. To be fair, not a whole lot has happened since we last talked. So when we last talked, I mentioned that one of the tributes killed her mentor, which wasn't entirely correct. They just slit their throat, but they did end up killing them. Coriolanus did try to kind of like stop the bleeding and something in like a panic, but that didn't do anything. And the peacemakers also shot the tributes, so one down. And the games haven't even started yet. But because of Coriolanus's action, he is kind of seen as a hero a little bit, and he even was brought out to this girl's funeral to like sing the capital's anthem because you're just seen as like her best friend and like everything, and everybody's like extra kind to him because they think he's like especially grieving, which, not to say that he isn't sad that she died, but like he doesn't really care that much, which that whole concept already immediately shows kind of Coriolanus's future, you know, because he hasn't gone evil at all yet, but like his way of manipulating a moment or people's thoughts about him in a way that favors him, even when that isn't necessarily the truth, and how he plays into that, that very much is the Snow we know, you know what I mean? And then afterwards, because of this whole accident, the tributes are encaptured even more. They aren't, like, the mentors aren't allowed to come very close to the cage. No outside visitors are allowed anymore, and they're back in shackle just to prevent anything like this from happening again, I presume. And then after that, we also go with our mentors and our tributes to like a visit to the arena to kind of show them around, but also it's like a televised thing, obviously. And then a little later, actually, the place gets bombed, or like a bomb explodes. The working theory is that because the arena only gets used for the Hunger Games, so once every year, and like in between, like nothing happens there, nobody comes to clean up or anything, the games end, and they take out the bodies, I guess, and then the next year the new games begin. That's all that happens there. So they don't, their current theory is that someone managed to sneak in and place bombs, but they don't know if that happened recently or like months ago and just happened to be triggered now. But that's the thing that happens that kills a lot of people. Honestly, kills a lot of people. Snow is not necessarily undamaged because he is injured a little bit, but he doesn't face too much damage, with Lucy Gray coming to his rescue, which causes him to kind of feel indebted to him afterwards. But it says 2 tributes from District 6 had been killed by shrapnel, and then I only did the districts, and then during the bombing, the both pairs from District 1 and 2 tried to escape, with both tributes from District 1 being shot by the peacekeepers, and then the girl from District 2 falling to her death as she tried to escape. And then the boy from District 2 actually managed to escape. They don't know where he is. So at this point, we have ended with 6 death tributes already. And there's also some mentors that died, but like, who cares? I'm keeping track of this. 6 out of 24 tributes are dead, with 1 unaccounted for. So that's technically 7 gone. We're moving through them like flies, even though the games haven't started yet, which is weird. But it also is mentioned that the tributes are receiving care from a veterinarian. It says it's a top-notch veterinarian, so they'll be fine. But like, I don't know if you know anything about veterinarians. They don't know shit about like people, like people's ailments. They do, you know, they are also humans, so I presume they do know some things about humans. But like, they know how to take care of a cow, they don't know how to take care of a human. Very different things, very different anatomies. And it concerned me that they don't see that, but oh well. And then later it also mentions that 2 tributes from District 9 died because of their injuries from the explosion, which adds 2 more to the tally. And then after Snow gets out of the hospital and everything, they have like a little, at the academy, they have a meeting where the mentors and the tributes get to talk and like, prepare for interviews, which has now become voluntary, so not everyone has to do it, but there's a thing. And of course Snow and Lucy talk about strategy, and yeah, that's really it. There's really much more to say. And afterwards they like all of the mentors about together, and this is where Sejanus kind of just like explodes, because I haven't really talked much about Sejanus besides the fact that I love him, but he is very rebel coded and he isn't afraid to say things. Like they talk like the games and stuff, and he gets like very upset in this scene, and like he tries to leave because he just doesn't want to be a part of it. As he wants to go back to District 2 and live his life there. He hates being in the capital and the way the capital views district people and stuff, and he's like very vocal about that, which, you know, interesting that they keep that going. And because he is such like anti-war, like other students are also like, oh yeah, maybe some things are fucked up about it, and their teacher is just like, you know, there's good and bad things about everything, including war. So like, how about you all write an essay about the good things during the war? And I'm like, that's fucked. Like, these were children that were consistently bombed, and now you're making them write an essay about how that was good, actually. And it was a fun time. We will live life loving throughout it all. That's fucked. And then we have the interviews, and Lucy sings a song, and Cornelius mentions that she goes off script. Like Lucy played him a lot of her songs, and they picked out a love song to sing, but she ends up singing the Ballad of Lucy Gray Baird. I don't still don't know how to pronounce that. So it's a story about her life, basically, and he's a bit pissed off about that, because in the song she mentioned her great like love that betrayed her, and Snow's like, where did that mean? And you know what? At this point, I have to say that something I've seen a lot about this book is mainly Snow and Lucy Gray's like relationship, and how people like think a lot of Snow's motivations throughout like the rest of the books in the series is motivated partially by his relationship with Lucy Gray, or like his feelings for her. But I can just say I don't see it. Like, I know technically he has feelings for her because we talk about it, but to me it kind of feels more, because he mentions that he's never seen the girls in the capital the way he does Lucy Gray, and to me part of that, because we also discuss how much he loves control, that's it. He loves control, and he can control Lucy Gray, which he can do with the capital. He sees her as a thing to play with, if that makes sense, and therefore like he is obsessed with her in that sense, and he's conflating that for love. And that's my interpretation of it, obviously, because I didn't write this book. I don't know what Susan Collins's intentions were, but the way so far I've been reading his feelings is very much that, like having a plaything to control, and that goes along with that. Like, Lucy loves the attention. Lucy Gray loves the attention and loves kind of like being at the center of this thing, which I'm sure has reasons, because she baffles me. Like, everything she says I have to think about like 2 or 3 times, because I'm like, there's more than one message here. So I think that she is very much like taking everything, like this shines in the spotlight, she's taking it and like fully grasping it, and she's doing something. I think she's doing it to go in a certain direction. But Snow obviously isn't seeing that, and he's just seeing someone who loves the spotlight, and he sees how that love for the spotlight can be manipulated in his favor as well, and it's going along greatly. And I feel like his obsession with her is because of that love for control, not necessarily love in general, if that makes sense. But anyway, to explain the song, Lucy Gray says this: I left some loose ends back in District 12. Me being tribute, well, there's bad luck and there's bad business. That was bad business. And someone who owed me plenty had a hand in it. The song, it was payback of a kind. Most people won't know that, but the covey will get the message loud and clear. And they're all I really care about. Which, that's basically confirmation that her weeping was wake, because like, come on. And makes me, I want to know more about Lucy. Like, do you know what I mean? But everything she says has like something hidden in it. This is one of those things where it's like more clear that definitely there's more going on, and I'm like, I want to know more about her. I wish this wasn't her POV, because I feel like she's so much more interesting. No offense. And she leaves me with so many questions that I feel like if we were in a POV would help me figure out things a little. But I'm presuming those things also come back to play later on. if that makes sense. And the night before the game starts, Coriolanus goes to visit Lucy Gray again in the cages, and he gives her food and also his mother's compact, like a powder compact, as like a sign of love as well. But also he mentions that she could put her own powder in it, and considering like the cages are lined with like rat poison, there's like rat poison all over the zoo because after a while kind of like rats infestated the zoo. It's basically his implication of like rat poison in there that could help you out later in the games, you know? They kind of have a love confession to each other. They kiss. I also, again, I don't know if Lucy Gray genuinely has feelings for him or if she's using that in her ploy. Like, I don't know what her plan is, but I know there is something going on. She is setting moves in a game that I don't even realize we're playing, and neither is no. And yeah, then we also get to mention that a boy tribute from District 5 has passed away again due to complications of his asthma because of the attack as well, which is 9 that one unaccounted for. We're almost halfway through the tributes and the games haven't even started yet, because that's where I left off right here. The games are about to start and I'm curious to see how things are gonna go down, but I'll eventually, once I've read probably another 100 pages. Okay, so I'm another 100 pages through the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. And I have questions. So where we left off, the games were about to begin, and I can mention that they did. The game start with Marcus hung from a beam, and at first it appears that he is dead, but no, he's alive. And if you don't remember, Marcus is the District 2 boy that ran away and survived during the explosion, but apparently they captured him and they tortured him so badly that he looks like close to death, but he's still alive, hanging there, which, you know, makes Sejanus explode kind of like in anger, and like he throws like a chair against like the wall that is like within their area and stuff, and not the wall that is at the screen that showcases the games. I'm sorry I messed that up. Like he has a proper freak out and he ends up leaving the place. And then actually events like really weird, but like the first bit of action we actually get in the games is this girl like climbing up the beam and then like properly killing Marcus. I'm like, okay, that's the first skill of the game. Sure, you got that on your name and it probably might lead to more sponsors, so in that sense it is maybe a bit smart, but that guy was basically dead. Like, no threat at all. Seems like so weird that that's like the first thing you go for. And honestly, they complain that this first day of the games is just like really boring, like nothing is happening. But there are a couple of tributes that die in the first day, but not a lot. And then at the end of day 1, it's night, so the mentors are sent home to like rest. And when Coriolanus arrives home, Sejanus's mom is there and basically like, hey, my son has not returned. And when I called the people, they said that he left the academy at like very early hours and I haven't seen him. What's up? Do you know anything? Because you're his friends. And Coriolanus is like, I'm not actually his friend, so I have no clue. And then as they're talking, the Hunger Games are on the screen and there's a movement going on around like Marcus's body, and so Janus's mom is immediately like, that's my son. And as she says that, the phone rings. Coriolanus picks up and it's the head game maker basically being like, what's this dude doing here? We need to get him out, and you're his friend, so you're gonna get him out. And so Coriolanus is sent into the arena with some protection, but not much, to retrieve Sejanus, and Sejanus reveals that he basically went in to make a statement because he thinks that if the tributes that kill him or anything, it could be like a statement to be like, fuck the games, you know? But Coriolanus very rightfully points out like, they're not gonna show that. There's no way that if you actually die in here, that's gonna be televised. And basically convinces Sejanus to be like, you can do more damage to the games, to the capital, to the system if you survive. And then obviously in his brain it's like, why the fuck would he ever like do something like this? Because if there's one thing Coriolanus already knows how to do and doesn't need any getting more evil front up, is that manipulating the situation to fit his needs. And right now, to be able to survive himself, he needs to get this boy out and he doesn't care about what he has to say. So Janus does agree to that, and as the only thing he wants is to take Marcus's body with him. But as they leave, they get attacked, of course, by another tribute, which actually Coriolanus ends up beating to death in self-defense, which is brutal. But because of this whole attack and wanting to escape more quickly, they also end up leaving Marcus's body behind. And then next morning, Coriolanus is already back to it. He has to tell everybody that his injuries come from like a biking accident, because obviously no one can know what happened. And then it isn't until the afternoon that another person ends up dying. And a little bit later we get some movement because Lucy Gray finally pops up. She ends up running out of a cave that she was hiding in, and her Jessup, who is the boy from District 12, ends up following her, and he looks messed up. Like, generally there is just something about him that makes him seem off, like delusional, until his mentor sees that he's foaming at the mouth and that he's therefore he has rabies. Why did I say rabbis? He has rabies. And they end up working together, Cornelius and his mentor, to apparently, I don't know if this is an actual thing because I know nothing about rabies, but people this far into rabies apparently are scared of water because they can't swallow it. So they send a lot of water his way so that he will like attack it and like fall to his death, because that's what's happened. And then they also send Lucy Gray some food, after which she disappears. And then when he gets home that night, Coriolanus also finds out that because the capital has previously been mentioned that only the districts got taxed, but earlier in the book it mentions that it's starting to happen with two capital people as well, that they're receiving taxes. And Coriolanus throughout this entire book has kind of been scared of that happening to them because they're already on the brink of financial debt. So they of course end up receiving the taxes that they have to pay. So now he's scared. But also what happened is that Sejanus's dad announced that whichever mentor's tribute ends up winning, that mentor will receive like a full scholarship to university. So he's fighting for that. And then there's a moment where Cornelius, after the day's events, like ends up in like the laboratory of like the head game maker's space, I guess. I don't fully get it. No, as he's leaving like the place, he's in an elevator with the head game makers and like two of the assistants, and they are transporting like a big tank of snakes. And these snakes we saw earlier, but I didn't mention them because it didn't seem that plot relevant, even though I had a feeling those snakes were gonna come back into play. But these snakes are mutts that basically have been transfigured to pick up on a smell, and if they recognize the smell, the person is safe, otherwise like visually attack. So Coriolanus immediately like recognizes these snakes and like has a small moment alone with them, and he has this handkerchief and he decides to drop it in like the little enclosure because he has a feeling, based on some things that the head game maker has said, that these snakes will be going into the arena, and obviously he wants to save Lucy Gray. The next day we go back to the games, and again, not much is happening, but we do get to an announcement that one of the mentors that obviously was injured within the explosion has passed away since now. Actually, Snow was told this in the elevator, and based on like that conversation, he came up with the theory that the snakes would be sent into the arena, which was true because the snakes immediately get sent into the arena and immediately start attacking the people around. And it is mentioned that it is as a punishment for the rebels. And then something really weird happens because Lucy Gray comes out of her like cave or tunnel and she starts singing. Like, she's just singing and like humming, and the snakes all stop what they're doing and go towards her, but like not in an attacking sense, because they quite literally like swarm her. And it says as the faded fabric vanished, leaving her with a brilliant skirt of weaving reptiles. And like, what is this girl? Like, I'm so confused by Lucy Gray in general. But this whole scene of her just like coming out singing and like all these snakes being like basically enchanted by her is baffling. I'm confused. I'm so confused. I don't know if I'm stupid or is it just like a thing that's a thing now. I don't know. Is it magic? I don't think so. There's like no magic. Is it like, because I don't know. I have no clue what's going on. Hi, so another 100 pages into the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. Let's start where we left off, and that is Lucy Gray just completely compelling all of the snakes. It still confuses me. It really does. Like, honestly, we do later on get the explanation that it was indeed like Coriolanus dropping the handkerchief that, by the way, had DNA from both Lucy Gray and himself on it, that brought her into safety, but like the way they just flocked to her and like come in all like changed paths, it's still odd to me. Anyway, she signed us on. It was nice. Then we go to like the ending of the games. Like people are killing each other. Nothing like too spectacular happens. Really, Lucy Gray is the last woman standing. And then immediately after winning, Coriolanus is kind of like taken out, and like he has to go to the dean's office, and he basically on the desk there is a napkin from the academy, the silver compact that like the compact from his mom that he gave Lucy Gray, and then the handkerchief he dropped in the snake enclosure. So they know, and they are forcing him to become a peacekeeper. And that's where we enter part 3, the peacekeeper, which this is not at direction I was expecting this book to take at all. So basically, when we enter this, we get more explanation that basically like the people figured out that he definitely like cheated to get Lucy Gray like to get the red poison, even though they do mention that Lucy Gray did say that the red poison was just solely her idea and that he had nothing to do with it, which isn't necessarily true because he did imply to do that. But like the fact that he gave her this compact while other people didn't have any possessions besides like the clothes, obviously no tokens, that is can be considered cheating. And then of course him dropping the handkerchief in the snake tank, that's cheating, and therefore he got expelled from the school. And it's kind of only other option basically besides just like live life in shame is to become a peacekeeper. So he does that. He asks to be assigned to District 12. So yeah, he gets stationed in District 12, makes some friends amongst the other peacekeepers, but like not really. And then while he's there, he gets a letter from Tiquis, and basically gets announced that yes, the taxes, they weren't able to pay it, they have to sell the house now, and you know, a whole breakdown of things that happened since he was gone. And Conan is just like, this no name is ruined. Like even if I get back, like he is on duty for like 20 years, but once even if I'm done with those 20 years, I'll just have to re-enlist because it's too much of a shame to go back to the capital. He's such a drama queen. I can't. It's so difficult to sympathize with him in those moments, because even though technically I do understand where he's coming from, because I'm sure it's like earth-shattering at that moment, considering the privileged life he has lived, even if he technically has been poor since the war. You know, it's all relative. Like a poor person from the capital does not lead the same life as a poor person in District 12. Even a rich person in District 12, I think, leads a worse life than a poor person in the capital based on Coriolanus' account. But just as he is like very depressed and thinking about ways to kill himself, Sejanus shows up, and he has also been assigned to District 12. He's also a peacekeeper, and he actually had to go through much worse because he was seen as a rebel sympathizer, and his dad had to basically buy out his chance to even become a peacekeeper. And then Coriolanus all of a sudden happy as a clam, and he starts scheming so much. Like in his inner monologue, he's already like, oh, if I could return to the capital, I could do this and this and this to put myself in good favor again, or I could do this and this and this to put myself. It's just, you were depressed like 5 seconds ago that your life was over, like shame, and never return to the capital because shame is so bad. And now you're immediately already just like after hearing just like one small story already like scheming your way back to the top. It's disturbing, honestly. But then they actually have to do their job for once, because there's gonna be a hanging in a town for this guy who blew up the mines by the one at the same time of the weeping, and ended up in the process killing 3 peacemakers. So that's a thing that happens. I also don't believe I have a hard time believing he bombed the mine. I have a feeling like that. I don't know why, but as it's pointed out in the actual book by Coriolanus, I have to agree with him on this, is that there was no point in blowing up the mine. Like there's no value for the rebels to blow up the mine. None at all. It does nothing. At this point, in their status and war and everything, like this isn't doing anything. This is just harming their own cause, honestly. So I have a hard time believing that is actually the rebels. I kind of just have a feeling that they discovered that this guy was a rebel, and probably like some other people as well surrounding him, and the capital, like someone staged this thing and blamed it on the rebels, so that, you know, the people of District 12 would be mad at the rebels because, like, you know, mine workers die during a mine bombing. But while the guy is being executed, he screams to one of the people to run away. That was on his side, which the Jabberjays pick up and keep repeating, which already drives Coriolanus insane, which is nuts. But then the Mockingjays pick up like the melody that it's being said in from the Jabberjays, and it's a constant melody going on. And Coriolanus goes nuts, and he like talks to some of the other peacekeepers because he at this point doesn't know what a Mockingjay is. Lucy Gray did at one point earlier mention that the story's never over until the Mockingjay sings, so he knows the saying from Lucy Gray, but he doesn't really know what a Mockingjay is. He just thinks that's like a bird that's native to District 12. But the other peacekeepers have to be like, no, Mockingjays are what, like, Jabberjays were invented. He knows that story, but they were loose in the wild, and because they thought they were all male, they wouldn't survive, but they actually made it with mockingbirds, and that's how mockingjays came to be. At first, Cornelius is like looking out into like the trees or whatever, I don't know where these birds are, and sees like a bunch of jabberjays, and he's like, he's thinking like, do mockingjays look like jabberjays, or is it like, what's going on? And then he spots a bird that looks different, and he immediately knows it's a mockingjay, and he immediately hits the bird. Which just this instant hatred for a mockingbird, like the bird. The way that foreshadows his life, insane. He also just like immediately comes up with a plan to kill all mockingjays. Which, like, okay, make you overreact. These are just birds. They're just humming a tune they heard. But yeah, they find out that at the hub, a girl is playing music, and Cornelius is like, that has to be Lucy Gray. So of course, they all go to watch. And of course, it is Lucy Gray, and she performs some songs together with some of the other covey. My man, really possessive. Like, he is so possessive of Lucy Gray, and he constantly keeps saying like, oh, she's my Lucy Gray. Like, and just the way he does it, like, I already told you that I don't necessarily believe he sees Lucy Gray as like generally a romantic interest, but more as a thing to have control over, to possess, and this just proves, like, I sorry guys, I don't see the romance. I really don't. He grosses me out every romantic scene they're in, but that comes later, because they do have like eye contact, and after like she's done singing, she is planning to come to him, walk to him, but as it's happening, all of a sudden just like the hob just goes quiet, and it's because Billy Taupe, I'm so sorry I mispronounced that, shows up, and he is a person that is a part of the covey, but is now dating the mayor's daughter, and it's very heavily implied. Like, he is basically Lucy Gray's ex as well, so tensions going on there. And a fight breaks out at the hop because like the entire covey is like, we don't want you here, and he's like, I'm gonna be here anyway. So you know, people are drunk at this point, it's the end of the night, so of course a fight breaks out because that's only natural. And there's also again, oh, I hate this so much, but there's like a quote that shows you how much I think that this is not a great romance, it's just seeing Lucy Gray as a possession. It had all gone like a dream, seeing Lucy Gray, hearing her sing, her joy at the sight of him, until Billy Taupe had showed up and spoiled the reunion. It was just another reason to hate Billy Taupe. Although seeing a covey's rejection of him was deeply satisfying, it confirmed that Lucy Gray belonged to him. I'll repeat that last line. It confirmed that Lucy Gray belonged to him. Over a situation that has nothing to do with him. Like, can you imagine? And then basically we skip forward to the next day where Sejanus and Coriolanus go down to this team to visit Lucy Gray's home, because like Coriolanus didn't get a chance to talk to her at the hub as he had planned. And they talk about the games and how they were only able to see the beginning of it, like the interview, because that's how they our family, like the copy, recognizes Coriolanus from the interview, and that's the only thing they got to see, because that's when the only point when they get connection. And this is another quote that I think is interesting. Dr. Gao could go on all she wanted about engaging people in the Hunger Games, but effectively no one in the districts had a working television. The impact would be confined to the reaping when everyone gathered in public. Which, it just stands out to me, because in the Hunger Games it is mentioned by Katniss that electricity and like TV in general is like very spotty, except on the games. For some reason, whenever the capital needs to make like a grand announcement or when the games are happening, there's never any issues, which I always saw as like capital control. I've never seen anyone talk about this online, so I don't know if I just read into that, but I always saw that as electricity works fine. The capital is just purposely shutting it off at moments to help keep District 12 uninformed, or like even other districts, because I'm sure this is not District 12 exclusive. And honestly, this mention of like Coriolanus picking up on the fact that bad electricity makes it like bad television reception and everything makes it so that people can't watch the games. He knows that connection. And he knows that if you want more people watching the games, you need to fix the TV reception, and like everybody has to have an accessible TV. He knows that. He made note of that here. So that just confirms my thoughts that the electricity doesn't go out at random in the districts. The capital is very much in control of that. And that's why it stays on during the games. I don't know. I feel like I'm going on about something that's not important at all. Lucy Gray is in the woods behind District 12, actually, at this moment in time. So after talking to the covey a little bit, he goes out to look for her, and when he finds her, she is singing The Hanging Tree, which is a song about the guy that was just hanged. And just knowing the implications of it song in the original trilogy, I wanna die. There's also, again, to point out how much I don't think Coriolanus is in love with Lucy at all. Obviously, he has a very twisted perception of love. Is there's a point where Lucy Gray says, "You're mine, I'm yours, it's written in the stars." And then in a monologue, he says, "Although he did not believe in celestial writings, she did, and that would be enough to guarantee her loyalty." Bitch, what do you mean? What do you mean guarantee her loyalty? Huh? Huh? This just sounds like you want a pawn. It's gonna say loyalty. I don't, no. Now when they go back to Lucy Gray's home, Billy Taupe is there in the garden talking to Sejanus. And this is another thing that enraged me, is here. Well, the sight of Billy Taupe and what he now considered his territory annoyed him. What do you mean her family home is your territory? Basically, Billy and Sejanus in the garden have been talking about the encampment where the peacekeepers live, because the girl that, like the guy from the hanging that was hanged, wanted to run away. The peacekeepers got her and like imprisoned her, and Billy knows the family and wants to get like just to know how she's doing. I'm sure that it's for a rescue mission, but officially the reason it yet is that Billy just wants to convey to the family how she's doing, if she's doing okay, and that's why they want to know where she's at and like how to catch her the encampment. Honestly, Sejanus tells Coriolanus this, and Coriolanus just goes off about him being like a traitor and like a rebel sympathizer, and how dare he do that. And Sejanus just like, I'm just human, basically. Like, I have humanity, that's why I'm doing this. So that's basically what Left and Zuck is doing. This argument is when Sejanus also reveals that Dr. Gao actually really wanted Sejanus out of there, and his dad also had to bribe her for it all. And Coriolanus' only takeaway from that is that, hey, she didn't think that way about me, so that means she still likes me. And now he's sending her a letter to get into her favor. And that's where I left things off. Hi, so I did it. I finished the book. Oh, and I didn't have to say a lot happens as I last talked to you, and I got much angrier at Slow. Last talked to you. So let's discuss. So when I last talked to you, he wrote a letter to Dr. Gall because he just figured out that maybe she's not as mad as he thinks she is. But then afterwards, Snow also goes to sign up to be like to do the officer's test, or what's it called? But as he signed up for that, there's been like this change in schedule because they went with Coriolanus' plan to get rid of try and get rid of the mockingjays and jabberjays. But before they can start shooting on the animals, the capital first wants to capture a couple to bring to the labs and, research them. So that is a thing that happens. There's also a moment where Coriolanus goes through Sejanus' stuff, and he finds a bunch of pictures in there, including a picture of a group of school children, and he automatically assumes that it's from the academy, and then he generally gets pissed off when it is from his District 12, the District 2 school, which makes way more sense. This man has no attachment to the capital and has many attachments to District 2, so of course he would bring pictures from his time in District 2 and not from his time in the capital. You know what I mean? Sejanus' stuff finds money, and Coriolanus is basically why does he need money? There's no need for money. Obviously, I from that moment on knew Sejanus was gonna win, and I'm shocked that it took Carolina so long to figure that out. There was like a moment where it's like free time and he misses Lucy Gray, and he this is what he says: "For all I knew, Billy Taub was trying to worm his way back into her heart at this very moment. Why pretend he wasn't at least a little jealous? Perhaps he should have had him arrested after all." And I just, what? Excuse me? Like, honestly. What's going on in this man's brain? Like, this is not a little jealous. There's no clear indication that Lucy Gray has any interest in getting back together with Billy Taub. Zero. In fact, she is actively disgusted by him, as far as we know up until this point. So to go fantasize about them maybe reuniting and then saying, maybe I should have had him arrested, when you're like a person that actually can get him arrested, you are a person of power in this. Just, I want to talk to everyone who thinks like Snow is madly in love with Lucy Gray. That's like his great big love, because Lucy Gray is a possession to him, and like everything that happens in this book makes that so obvious. Anyway, back to when actually the people from the lab have arrived and they're trying to trap Jabberjays and Mockingjays, and one of the doctors actually ends up explaining to Cornelius like exactly how the Jabberjays work, which I'm not gonna go in depth about, but that is an explanation we get, which I did think was very interesting. And just there's also then like a moment where again they're like talking about like the Mockingjays, and Ray is so actively disgusted by everything the Mockingjays are. Is so funny to me, because the Mockingjays in their pure nature, like I wrote this outline here. Wait, I'm gonna read what I wrote. The Mockingjays' existence is like a nature's middle finger to the capital. Of course, Snow would hate them. That's what I wrote down, because that's truly it. And then the Sejanus and Coriolanus end up meeting up with the Covey again, but this is before one of their shows at the Hub, and Coriolanus mentions what they were doing with like the Jabberjays and Mockingjays, and Lucy Gray just like, I hate that. Like she doesn't say those words, but like she sounds awful to her. Like she doesn't like get along with it basically. And she does mention it sounds like torture having someone controlling your voice like that. And then Coriolanus reacts to that with, I don't think there's a human equivalent. And I'm like, bitch. Bitch. How dare you say that? I mean, at this point, he's done nothing of the sorts. But as President Snow, he's definitely shutting up people and controlling what they can say 100%. You see what I mean? And also just like, I even underlined that I meant Avox, because even though technically Avoxes can't talk at all, so like it's not like their speech is controlled, they just have no speech, but that still is a controlling decisions made by other people for them. I feel like Avox is a pretty, being turned into an Avox is a pretty comparable thing there. Lucy Gray also like challenges that by saying, do you always feel free to speak your mind clearly in the snow? And he is like, yeah. And he's like, well, within reason. And it's like, and then he says, but if it came to it, he'd speak out. Wouldn't he against the Capitol like Sejanus had? And like, bitch, no. Anyway, the Covey goes on to perform, but during the performance there's also a moment where Sejanus is kind of like leaves for a little bit, and then he comes back and he's like, oh yeah, I went to pee, and like for some reason Coriolanus like doesn't believe him, which is so strange, because why? Because Coriolanus is like, he didn't drink enough to be able to have gone to pee. I'm like, really? And the next day they go to the forest, to the lake, just to hang out, have fun. There's also a moment where one of Lucy Gray's cousins is singing, and the Mockingjays kind of end up repeating after her, like joining in on the melody. But Coriolanus mentions hearing Mockingjays but not hearing Jabberjays, because they're in a part of the woods like further down where only Mockingjays are, no Jabberjays. And he literally Here's what his mnemonic says. The only explanation he could think of was that the Mockingjays had begun to reproduce without them, either with one another or with the local mockingbirds. The elimination of the capital birds from the equation deeply disturbed him. I'm like, why? Genuinely, why? Why do you need capital created mutts to be in the equation for you to feel comfortable with this? Are you okay? These are just birds. This is not about anything going on in the human realm. These are just birds. And of course, as a reader, reading this book, it is as fiction. Of course, there's deeper meaning to that, but like, just with a real life experience. This is why you're so bothered by birds. Holly, chill. Also, something interesting that I thought about is that they talk about trust and love. And Lucy Gray says this, I think it's more important than love. I mean, I love all kinds of things I don't trust. Thunderstorms, white liquor, snakes. Sometimes I think I love them because I can't trust them. And how mixed up is that? She says, I trust you though. But I do think it's interesting that Obviously, she has an affinity for snakes. It's very obvious throughout the entire book. But I think it's interesting that in Mockingjay, Finnick associates Snow with a snake because of his tendency to poison people. And for her to then go like basically saying I love snakes and sometimes I love things more because I can't trust them. I'm just like, that is, drawing a parallel with Snow, it's an interesting thing to make. And I know she considers, I feel like I earlier said that I didn't know if she actually felt feelings for Snow, but like reading this one of the books, very clear that she does. It's not just a means to an end the way it is for Snow, I think, even if he doesn't necessarily even see that in his own mind. But I generally think that Lucy Gray has feelings for Snow, but that's because I think that she has been manipulated by him. Like she sees a part of him that like she sees him as compassionate to her cause, if that makes sense, compassionate to her life, compassionate to her people, and he is like, she basically sees him the way Sejanus is, if that makes sense, because that's the way he presents himself in front of her. And then after they return, they go to the bog and Coriolanus sees Sejanus talking to a weapons dealer, and Sejanus mentions that he just wants to get a pocket knife. Several of the peacekeepers have a personal pocket knife, but obviously what's going on there. And then there is a moment where they've captured a bunch of Chapterjays and Mockingjays, and Coriolanus is kind of in charge of like categorizing them, I guess. And when he is doing that, Sejanus comes up to him and tells him about this plan that he made with Billy Taupe and some other rebels to run away, like to get the girl that wasn't captured. I believe it's the lover from the guy who was hung earlier in the book, but they were gonna free her and then run for the hills. And this bitch he has like one of the remotes that, because Jabberjays work like a certain signal gets sent out, they go in like record mode, and he has like a remote that can send out a certain signal, so he presses it so that it goes on record mode, and he records everything Sejanus says about his plan to escape. And I'm like, bitch. I mean, not that I expected anything better from him, but like, I don't know if you want to see this, but I literally wrote in massive letters that bitch, because the audacity. But what he does end up doing is he doesn't necessarily like go with the Jabberjay to like the general and be like, hey, listen to this. He just sends it and he hopes that the people at the lab will figure it out before anything can actually happen, which is weird because he doesn't want to dirty his hands. And then he finds out from Tigris that things are going to shit. The apartment is selling for less than they would need, basically. That makes him angrier and like less guilty about what he's doing. And he literally says someone should pay for the indignities of the Snow family, and who better than a Plint? Literally everyone else. The Plint have done nothing wrong. And then there was another performance from the copy, but basically again he notices that Sejanus has disappeared, so he goes after him because he's like, there's no way he's gone to piss again. And turns out that Sejanus was making a weapons deal, obviously, to like buying weapons so that they can escape and survive in the wilderness. And this is kind of a weird thing because Lucy Gray also shows up like in between times. She goes backstage and that's where they're hanging out. And this is just like things that I have questions about, because this guy named Spruce, who is the brother of the girl that they're trying to rescue, at a certain point, because he's mad that there's extra people there because, this is supposed to be like a clandestine thing. Sejanus is covers for Coriolanus, and wait, I'm just gonna read it. Spruce redirected his barrel to Lucy Gray. What about this one? I told you about her, said Billy Type, because he's also there. She's going north with us. She's my girl. Coriolanus could feel Lucy Gray clench his arm, then drop it. If you'll take me, she said. You two aren't together, said Spruce, his gray eyes moving from Coriolanus to Lucy Gray. Coriolanus had been wondering this as well. Was she really going with Billy Type? Had she been using him as he'd suspected? You see, my cousin, Barbara Zura, she sent me to tell him where to meet up tonight is all, said Lucy Gray. Okay, question number one. Was Lucy Gray actually intending to run away with him? Because badass. I love her for that. Obviously, they're trying to hide that Lucy Gray and Coriolanus are dating, but how is saying that Coriolanus is dating her cousin any better? That still has the same problematic things going on there. I'm so confused by this entire interaction. But as they're having the conversation about running away and the weapons and everything, the mayor's daughter, Mayfair, I believe her name is, she kind of runs into them, and she is kind of like backing away whilst like talking to them, and Coriolanus notices her backing away, and he's like, if she escapes and she tells people that I was here, they'll think I'm a rebel and I'll die, so he shoots her, which is wild. And then, Billy Taupe freaks out, so Spruce ends up shooting him. So, very twist of event. But after this, Cornelius basically sends Lucy Gray to go perform, because if you're on stage, you have an alibi. So she goes to do that, and then he and Spruce and CJ just kind of like clean up the crime scene a little bit, except not really, and leave. And then the next day, they're on base, and this is when he becomes so paranoid, Coriolanus. It's so bad. But he is just constantly scared of people figuring out that he was beyond it. And there is this thing where he was scared that Lucy Gray might be implicated because Billy Taupe is her ex, but then also because Mayfair is basically the reason she got sent into the games, because the reaping was waked because of that. And then he also says, and once the arena was bought into it, could he be implicated? No one from 12 knew he was her new love except the Covey, and Lucy Gray would keep them quiet. Anyway, if she had a new love, why would either of them care about Billy Taupe? Which is so ironic, because this man cares more about Billy Taupe than anyone else. And then ultimately, Spruce gets brought, like he sees Spruce being brought through the camp, so they got him. They know he's involved, or they suspect he's involved with the murder, but he dies from his injuries from being captured, you know. And then a little later, they end up actually arresting Sejanus, and the other people from like their little group, their room, are like, that's impossible, like Coriolanus and Sejanus spent the entire night with us. They were too drunk to remember that they were gone for a little bit. And and the sergeant literally goes, I appreciate your loyalty, but I think this is about something else. So yeah, basically they figured out Sejanus was planning to run away, was working with rebels, was in cahoots, and they end up hanging him and Lil, who is the woman they captured earlier. They end up hanging them at the hanging tree. And after that, he freaks out again, because he somehow is convinced that his gun is gonna show up and they're gonna pull his DNA and know it's him. So he's like, he's just waiting for it. And he's also just haunted by the death of Sejanus, because he feels responsible for it, which he is. I'm not gonna lie. And then he gets brought in to talk to the commander, and he basically is like, the Jabba J you sent, we know it was you, would like, not tattles on Sejanus, but they're like, respect. But we're gonna keep this quiet because people are still a bit like, emotional over his dad, over his betrayal. If they know about you, they're gonna freak out, so we'll keep this quiet, don't worry, but like, we're proud of you, good job. And then the commander's birthday is actually, and they hired the band from the hop, because the commander gets a kick out of them. So we're gonna see Lucy Gray again, because the copy is there to perform. And it says that Lucy Gray appeared in a rainbow dress from the arena, and Cornelius says, but he felt certain that it was for him. Which, no bitch, this is obviously a sign of rebellion. Like, oh my god, are you kidding me? Especially because at the end, you just mentioned that Lucy Gray was there, like full gray attire, like with hair coverings, everything, like very morning attire. So for her to then perform at the commander's birthday, the people who were the reason for the hanging happening, and she wears the same dress that she wore to the games, yeah, that's a fuck you. It is that. Like, I'm sorry, this is not about you. It really isn't. Nothing ever is, truly. And this is, now I'm gonna give you the reason why I think that Lucy Gray generally just has a one view of Coriolanus, is that during this performance, she ends up performing a new song, and it's a love song, and it has a lot of references to her time with Coriolanus in it, and also mentions the line, you're pure as the driven snow. So it's obvious that she sees her as someone she sees him as someone completely different. He sees it as a sign that he's genuinely still a good person, because if Lucy Gray thinks that about him, that means he has a good heart, he's a good person. And then during the performance, there's again a moment where Lucy Gray's off stage, and Coriolanus takes that as a moment to go talk to her backstage, and they talk about Sejanus' dead, and this bitch literally says, I don't know, someone betrayed him, I guess. And then Lucy Gray goes, Spruce. But then basically Lucy Gray mentions that the mayor is absolutely convinced that she killed his daughter, and is trying to get the peacekeepers to arrest her, but like the peacekeepers are like, we have no reason to arrest her, so they don't, which already, honestly, a win for the peacekeepers for once in their life. But he is basically stalking her house and her family. She basically is like, there's no way he's not gonna kill me in retribution. So she wants to win. And Cornelius is like, wait a damn minute. He literally says this, for the first time in days, he saw a way to escape the noose. He only cares about I swear to God, like if my love of my life would come to me being like, I feel unsafe in a situation when I want to run away, I would be, okay, I'm gonna win with you because I want to be with you. I'm not gonna be, I'm gonna win with you because that's a perfect escape. Because then people will never know that I killed that bitch. And then I was like, they agree to meet up the next morning and run away together. And then she has to go back on stage, and he like also goes back to the party because like they can't notice I'm gone for too long. And then Lucy Gray ends up performing the hanging tree to signify where to meet up, which of course Coriolanus also has an issue with because the hanging tree used to be a meeting spot for her and Billy Taupe, and he's angry at that because he doesn't have a life. The next morning, she gets a notification that he's the youngest person ever to pass the test for the to be an officer basically, and he will especially be sent to District 2 the next day because he's so sublime that he can't stay in District 12, I guess. But he still decides to run because like there's no way they won't find my gun. So they run away, and they end up going to the lake first because she desperately wants to see the lake one last time before completely running away, because that was her place of like peace and serenity and for her family. And it starts absolutely storming the moment they get there, and there is this little lake house, which makes me think there's the same lake house as in Hunger Games where Katniss also grew up and learned to swim, and her dad brought her there. I think that it pretty sure it's the same location. So they go there, and when they are there, what does Snow find but a bag of weapons, the weapons that Sejanus bought alongside the gun that he killed Mayfair with. And Lucy Gray, as he finds the bag, no wait, there is also a moment. Wait, I have to say this quickly. There was a moment where I don't remember exactly how, but in conversation, Coriolanus mentions having killed 3 people, and Lucy Gray's like, 3. I remember the guy in the games. I remember the girl from the mayor. Who, and he ends up saying it myself. I killed the old me so I could come with you. But obviously, the third person was Sejanus. But then, as he finds the guns, Lucy Gray's immediately like, I saw some Katniss out there. I'm gonna get that because we could eat that. And she leaves. And meanwhile, Sejanus just is like finding the weapon, finding his gun, and realizing, oh God, I'm living the life. I'm living la vida loca. I can go back because I can just get rid of this gun and problem solved, which again shows how little he cares about Lucy Gray. Because why would you not want to run away to get a life, especially after she mentioned that she doesn't think she could have actually done this alone. And then it is absolute insanity. Starts twisting Lucy Gray into being like an awful person. So basically, it also realizes that that Lucy Gray put one-on-one together. She probably realizes that the third person he killed is a reference to Sejanus. She also probably knew the gun was in that bag, and as soon as Coriolanus like saw that, she knew what was gonna happen. She put one-on-one together before he did, and that's why she ran. And so he goes out into the forest to talk to her and to also just like generally, I don't know, threaten her, I guess, make sure she doesn't say anything to anyone. And he doesn't find her. He keeps shouting to her, doesn't find her. She does find a scarf that he gave her, and he ends up going in that direction because he thinks the scarf is still around Lucy's neck, but she ties it around a tree, and as she goes to grab it, a snake bites him. And because snakes and Lucy are like this, he literally says this was a booby trap, and he walked straight into it. Poor lamb indeed. He was beginning to sympathize with Billy Taupe, which this is gonna become very funny later on. But basically at a certain point, he keeps like yelling to like, I want to talk to you, Lucy Gray, just come on, you know? And all of a sudden he hears the hanging tree, and he ends up stepping in that direction. The Mockingjays start up taking this on, and he shoots in the general direction, and then afterwards starts shooting wildly random because he hates the Mockingjays so much and wants to kill all the Mockingjays as well. And what I think is very interesting is that the Mockingjays keep repeating the hanging tree. And I'm not gonna say that this is a guarantee that Lucy Gray's dead, but throughout this book, with every death, especially in this last part where we're on District 12, the Mockingjays going wild and taking over Melody like this is a symbol of someone dying. It has been this entire time. Well, Arlo, the first guy, got hanged, him shouting to his loved one to run away. that got picked up by the Jabberjays and then by the Mockingjays as a melody, and that kept haunting the town for a little while after his death. When Sejanus and Lil got hanged, Sejanus ends up shouting out for his mom at the end, and the Jabberjays pick up on that, and it haunts the town for a little bit after that. So the fact that Lucy Gray was sitting in the hanging tree, Coriolanus shoots random, he doesn't see her, he just shoots in a general direction, and then the Mockingjays keep repeating the hanging tree, haunting the woods after that. That, alongside the fact that Lucy Gray literally said the story isn't over until the Mockingjays sing, I don't even think there's a subtext at the point to say that Coriolanus definitely killed Lucy Gray here, right? There's no way he didn't, right? Like, everything about how the scene goes down heavily implies Lucy Gray was shot and died. Tell me if I'm crazy about that. Anyway, we do move on, where he ends up getting rid of the gun in the lake, and then he makes his way back to District 12. So he goes to the doctor to get treated for his snake bite. The doctor literally says it wasn't even venomous. So him basically going on like this whole spiral by being bitten by a snake, and how it was obviously a trap from Lucy Gray to try and kill him, and the snake wasn't even venomous. The next day he gets transported to District 2, but he falls asleep on the train, and then he wakes up and in the capital because Dr. Gall basically is like, I don't want to throw away a shot, and basically gives him a scholarship to the university to study under her because she thinks he has a lot of potential. And there's also a moment where it's mentioned that Dr. Gall has the only remaining copy of these games. All other evidence of the games has been destroyed. He literally says this: he was glad about the erasure. It was just one more way to eliminate Lucy Gray from the world. The capital would forget her, the districts barely knew her, and District 12 had never accepted her as one of their own. In a few years, there would be a vague memory that a girl had once sung in the arena, and then that would be forgotten too. Goodbye, Lucy Gray, we hardly knew you. There's no way you say this about someone you presumably love. No way. This is him wanting to erase Lucy Gray because he knows deep down that he killed her, and he doesn't want that on his permanent record. He doesn't, like, if people forget Lucy Gray exists, they can't know that someone killed her. You know? Anyway, epilogue makes me hate him even more, because his life is great now. He's in university, he is on track to be a game maker. In fact, he has an internship at the game makers, but they already treat him like he is one because he's just that good at it. And in fact, he has introduced the idea that the districts will receive parcels of food if the winner is from the district, and then to also encourage more people to volunteer and to get a decent crop of performers. He also introduces basically the winner's village and the money prize that comes with it. I'll repeat, a decent crop of performers. That's the reason. That's fucked. It is a game of life to death. You're gonna call them a decent crop of performers? Get fucked. And then it is also noted that basically the Plints have basically adopted him, like not really because he's already adult, but they have taken over care of him, because it is mentioned that it is said that Sejanus' dad basically says, my wife needs something to live for, so do I for that matter. You've lost your parents, we've lost our son. I was thinking perhaps you could work something out. So they're basically one big happy family with the Snows, so with her grandmother and with Tigwiz as well, and they sponsor everything the Flints do, which just... the way he talked shit about the family this entire book, even if he wasn't directly behind the death of Sejanus, is just despicable. And add to the fact that he is that, the way he can just live like this is just wild. But yeah, and then we end basically with this discussion with Dean Highbottom, and we basically get why the Dean and Coriolanus' dad had a huge falling out, because they used to be friends and then had a huge falling out. And it's mentioned that for one of Dr. Gall's classes in university, they had to, for a project, they needed to come up with a punishment for one's enemy so extreme that they would never be allowed to forget how they had wronged you. That was the assignment, which already is fucked because this is pre-war, remember that. Basically, he was struggling with Dr. Gall's class. He didn't really like Dr. Gall at all, and he and Coriolanus' dad were hanging out, getting drunk, and the dean came up with the idea for the Hunger Games. And because he was so drunk, he was very easily like spurred on to think of worse and more evil things. And then the next morning, he read back everything he thought of, and he wanted to rip it to shreds because he thought it was so despicable, so vile, and it should never happen. But Cornelius's dad actually handed it in as an assignment, which obviously made the girl have the idea, go ahead with it. So he is like very, very, very much against the games. And it's so interesting to me that the creator of the games basically is so against it. And it's like, that should have never have been a thing that existed. Is wild. And then also I think that technically Cornelius's dad is responsible for the games because he's the one that handed it in. Like if it was just for the dean, nothing would have happened because he would have gotten rid of it because he thought it was too despicable. But then it is also mentioned that basically Snow starts poisoning as he puts rat's poison in the dean's morphling because he's upset, like he is addicted to morphling, and Corleone just quietly put rat poison in there, and that's how the dean got killed. It's first poisoning. Let's go, everyone. But yeah, I give this book 4 stars in the end because I think it's phenomenal. Like, as much as I hate Snow throughout the entire process of this, especially towards the end, I wanted to just like sucker punch him. That's the point. I think it's also very interesting to learn more about the world like very early Hunger Games times. I think that was also interesting. I think Lucy Gray is still an enigma to me, but I loved her. I thought she was an incredible character. The only reason this wasn't a 5 for me is that I do think that throughout a lot of this book, I was like, okay, what's the direction we're going in? What are we doing here? I feel like it doesn't always have the clearest directive besides just showing how Snow got to be in the position that he's in. But I do think this was a great expansion onto this world, and I am very glad we got it because I do feel like it gives very vital information about this world that I think is very interesting. So yeah, I'm sorry for all my yapping. This is genuinely gonna be the longest video on my channel. I hate it too. Feel free to discuss anything about this book with me in the comments. Again, be aware I have not read this book yet, so keep that in mind while doing some things. But I would love to talk everything to do with this book with you in the comments, and hopefully I'll see you next time. Here I am again, the same old situation. What does